All right, Admin Mastermind and Teach Better Family. So great to see everyone as we are concluding, Chad, our last Admin Mastermind of 2024, which is
Right.
crazy to say, but with the way the schedule works, we're not going to meet on Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve. So we've given everyone a break and they're going to hopefully rest and rejuvenate to kick off 2025. But love the conversation today. And before we
hmm
begin diving into topics, I just want to thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the fact that even at the end of the year, we're still having these rich problem and solution focused conversations that are helping administrators solve problems. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah.
Awesome. And so, just for those who may be joining us for the first time on YouTube, we meet every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. And we have a ton of administrators that jump in all over the country and Canada to really just collaborate. And I mean, once again, Chad, we just kind of threw it up to everyone and we asked them to, share something that's going on in their world. And then as a team, we would just collaborate and have that conversation. And I blinked and 45 minutes had passed. So, that's pretty much
Right.
how it goes each week. You can head over to teachbetter.com/mastermind for your free sign up. You're not only going to get the link for your weekly, meeting link, but you're also going to get the Facebook group that you can connect with. And that Facebook group was created because we obviously are supporting you here on Tuesday mornings, but we want to make sure that you have support from everyone throughout the week. So, yeah, Chad, let's dive in. I know that right away we had someone that was working through state testing, which is
hmm
crazy to think about as we're early in the
Right.
year. But there has been a state change. I know this is something that you've seen specifically in Ohio and some other states that you've been supporting, where students with an IEP are now getting tested, on the same level as everyone else. Do you want to kind of share what was,
Yeah.
the problem?
Yeah. So the administrator in their state has this new shift where a lot of the students that are formerly alternatively assessed, so they didn't have
Yep.
to take the state assessment, now are lumped in with everybody else and they have to just take the state assessment. And this is posing two problems. There's a logistical problem with this for this administrator because they have to figure out how to use their human capacity available within the testing window to provide the necessary accommodations for all the students who didn't normally have to take the test, who now have to take the test. So things like read aloud, things like visual aids, things like all of the things that they might need, or even devices, right? Like depending on the needs of the students, these students normally weren't in the group of tested students for like the normal state test, quote unquote, right? They would be alternatively assessed. Well, in Ohio and throughout the Midwest, but like across the entire country, there's been a huge shift, which is going to lead to my second part of this, where we are taking students that were normally alternatively assessed and we're going, well, now the bar is going to be a lot higher to get those same group of kids to be alternatively assessed. So, unless there's a significant cognitive or physical deficit that the student can't overcome, they're probably going to be taking the regular, meat and potatoes state test with whatever accommodations that they have. And what this is doing is a few things at the classroom level, but as well as the school and the building level. So if you had 10% of your students who were normally alternatively assessed, but now you have 2% of your students that are alternatively assessed, you now have 8% of the students that normally wouldn't be taking that test taking that test. And especially in the first few years, they may not perform the way that they traditionally would have on the alternative assessment. So a lot of schools are starting to see like a drop in scores, percentages, and things like that. The other component of this we have to acknowledge and that we talked through was the idea that unless a student under the new guidelines is alternatively assessed, we need to be teaching to the rigor and the cognitive complexity of the written standards. And this is something that we talk about all the time, Josh, especially on the team. When working with schools and districts about depth of knowledge, designing good assessments, we need students working up to the standards regardless of their deficits. We need to know what we're measuring with assessments, activities, and learning tasks, because if we know what the outcomes are that we're looking for, we can then scaffold and provide the right accommodations around those things so that we can accurately measure how the kids are going to do. So this is all of these changes have been happening for a while, but this is going to require a shift in how we think about scaffolding, instruction, and every student meeting the needs of the standard, because now all of those kids are expected to meet that standard when they see that state test.
Yeah, I think that mindset shift is important because I think you made a comment too about like how some folks might state like these kids can't do that. They won't meet this
Right.
level, and there's going to be some pushback. But at the same point, the problem still lies. Like it's a state mandate, and it's something that we are going to need to shift our mindsets on in regards not only our practices but our mindset shift to begin with.
And the other part of that conversation, I think, is that but pushing them to that potential is still going to benefit everyone, right? So like that's sort of in the background always for me, is that having that expectation that they meet the standard is going to help them whether they fully meet it or not based on prior work or experience, right? And in my experience, and I'm not saying we can't discount all student cognitive deficits or needs, because there are specific cases. I'm not trying to get into the minutia of all that, just to be clear. What I am trying to say is that there is never a case where holding a student to a higher standard is going to hurt their performance. It's never going to happen. It might make them realize that they have more work to do. It might be more challenging for them, but all of those things have a net gain if we look at the scale and scope over time. So raising student achievement and increasing expectations go hand in hand. And you can look at even research from, Hattie that says, hey, one of the highest impact scores for instruction is teacher expectations for students. Period. End of story. When teachers think and when students know that teachers believe in them, they just do better. And so we have to enter into that mindset regardless of what we think students can actually do, because us holding them to those higher standards will increase achievement based on all of the data and research that we have. So even if it doesn't feel like it day to day, having those higher expectations, holding them to the expectations of the standards, and not lowering those expectations so they quote unquote like feel better day to day, or it feels like they're accomplishing more day to day. I think that's critical. It's not easy, but it's a critical shift that has to happen.
Yeah, talking about that critical shift in mindset and the way we think, the conversation transitioned to just the amount of student behaviors that are going on due to the holidays,
Yeah.
specifically with tardies and detentions and kind of the strategies that are being used right now. But I think the point that came up was that, in the grand scheme of things, the majority of our students are doing the right thing.
Yeah.
However, that's not the perception going on specifically with teachers. So we just speak on that, Jack, as I know that you had just not too long ago
Yeah.
have added experience with this.
Absolutely. Like, so teacher perception is absolutely a real thing. And when you're in the middle of a classroom and you have two, three, four kids out of 30 not engaged, acting up, it feels like 30 every time. And I fully understand that from like a teacher perspective. However, I just recently had a situation that I shared with the admin mastermind where these teachers were at the end of their rope. They were saying things like, nothing's working, we can't do anything, nothing's getting done, this is the worst year ever, like burnt out, tried everything, we're just like ready to throw in the towel. And when you dig in deep enough to 90% of these conversations, I'm not saying that the problems aren't there. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is they're probably at a scale that can be attacked and improved. And what ended up happening in this specific conversation that I'm having is we realized it was 4 or 5 kids out of 100 that was actually causing 90 to 95% of the issues. And they were spread across multiple classrooms. So now you're talking about 2 to 3 kids out of 20 to 30 in a given class period. Now, 2 to 3 kids acting up in a class period is not the easiest thing to deal with. I've experienced this myself, but when it's 8 or 9. And the truth, though, is we cannot create instructional environments that can be ruined by less than 5% of the students we have. Like, if that's happening, we need to change the instructional environment. We need to change the instructional style so that others can continue learning even when the few decide not to. And this is a ton of the work we tend to do with not only classroom management, but from an instructional design standpoint, self-paced learning, mastery learning, facilitated learning versus sage on the stage, all the information coming from one person. So, for administrators, I'm going to have you ask yourselves a question next time you have this conversation with a staff member and they go, I just can't teach because so and so's in my room, or these 3 kids are ruining it for 20. I have these conversations literally weekly, monthly, daily, sometimes with teachers. And the first question I always ask is, how can we change the design of the instruction so that one kid can't ruin it for 20? How can we change it so that when one kid has a bad day, everyone can continue learning and that kid has a bad day? I'm okay if 1% of kids don't learn one day. I'm not okay if 100% of kids don't learn because 1% decided that was going to be the case. So, this is not, in my opinion, a management issue. This is an instructional problem that we have to address and that we have to attack head on. The other side of this tends to be, what about whole child intervention? If it's 3, 5, 8 kids out of 120, even 10 or 15 kids out of 120, it's still less than 20% of your student population. How are we attacking this problem with the counselors, with assistant principals, with parents, with community outreach, with a team meeting, with behavior contracts? There's 50 tools I can think of off the top of my head where we can chip away and improve those outcomes from a behavior standpoint. But we should still be looking at the instructional side and going, A, what can we change so that one kid can't ruin it for everybody else? Because that's the most important question in my mind, because we're always going to have that 5% that's not going to have a good day sometimes. That's always going to be there every classroom, every day. They're always going to exist. But we can't let that 1 to 5% ruin it for the other 90, 90, 95, 100%. It's not fair, and it's not equitable, and it's not a good instructional design if it's possible.
Yeah. No, I love the conversation this morning. Chad, those were excellent points. And for those, again, who are joining us for the first time, Tuesday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern time, it is free, costs you nothing but a little bit of your time to connect and collaborate with other administrators. And as we know, as a leader, you need to make sure that you have a community that you're a part of. We can't do this work alone. So head over to teachbetter.com/mastermind. Just a reminder again, we won't be meeting for the next couple of weeks just due to the holidays. So make sure that you're taking that time. But if you're noticing that there's nothing on YouTube or in the podcast players for the next couple of weeks, we didn't forget about
Just
you.
relax. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, just chill out, drink your eggnog, and
roast
enjoy
some
that family time.
chestnuts on an open fire.
Exactly. So, Chad and everyone that's watching, I hope you have a happy holidays during the season. And we appreciate you. And of course, if you need anything from the team, we are here for you. So please reach out, as we're willing and able to support you in any way that we possibly can. Chad, thank you so much for joining this week, and looking forward to 2025.
Always a pleasure, my friend. Have a fantastic holiday.